Well, hello, how is everyone? I hope you're all well. This is video 2 of 2. You're looking absolutely amazing, and it's Friday. And we're talking about something a little bit different, not Jay Slater. We'll be speaking about that on Sunday, and we spoke about it earlier today. Who are we talking about now? Can you remember? We obviously had Steve Irwin, didn't we? Steve Irwin was the man. But we used to joke. We used to sort of have our own little parodies because he was an animal lover. And we used to say, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stick my finger right up his butthole and really piss him off. And now we've got a situation where we've got a guy who has worked with animals alongside the crocodiles like Steve Irwin and, got to share the same space as legends like Sir David Attenborough. And it turns out that this guy really would likely put his finger up an animal's butthole, but not to piss it off. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about this guy, Adam Britton. Adam Britton, the monster animal abuser who hid in plain sight. Now that's him there in the middle. Him there. Geeky looking nerd, looks a little bit like Where's Wally, who's been changed into some, I don't know, outdoorsy clothing. And then we've got David Attenborough at the end there with a little croc. There we go. So it says, over decades, a 53-year-old built a colourful reputation as one of the world's leading crocodile experts. He swam with the apex predators in the wild, lent his pet crocodile Smorg to countless films and documentaries, and even hosted Sir David Attenborough at his home in Darwin, Australia. All the while preaching the need for greater respect for the creatures. Warning, this story contains details of abuse readers might find distressing. Now, I'm going to have to try and dull this down a little bit, but obviously it's going to be on the screen. I'll pin the link to this in the description so you can read it. But it says, Britain has now been dubbed one of the world's worst animal abusers. This week sentenced to over a decade in jail for filming himself abusing and torturing dozens of dogs, along with 56 charges of animal cruelty, bestiality, and he has also admitted to 4 counts of accessing child abuse material. The news sent ripples of shock and disgust around the globe, leaving some of those who knew Britain questioning how he became the monster of McMinn's Lagoon, a reference to the sprawling property where he committed his crimes. Several described to the BBC a shy but friendly man, others an arrogant attention seeker who took credit for work that was not his own. But there was one point on which they all agreed. When combing through their memories for clues of Britain's depravity, they found nothing. And this is important, isn't it? We've spoken about this before, that there isn't a specific look for a monster. There's not a mould, if you like. Some people can look completely normal and hide a truly dark side. It truly seems like a Ted Bundy type situation where you would never imagine such a thing being possible, former colleague Brandon Seidler says. An early fascination with crocs, born in West Yorkshire in 1971, court documents state that Britain had concealed a sadistic sexual interest in animals since he was a child and began doing stuff to horses at the age of 13. But beyond that, little is known about his youth in the United Kingdom. On his blog, Britton said he was inspired to become a zoologist for 3 people. His mum, who was an avid naturalist, his biology teacher, Val Richard, and Sir David, his role model. Naturalist is not to be confused with naturist, the people who go around with their nuts and bolts hanging out. He studied a Bachelor of Science at the University of Leeds, graduating in 1992. Then in 1996, finished a PhD in zoology on the hunting methods of bats at the University of Bristol. But his dreams was always to escape the UK and research crocs. He said in the 2008 interview he'd been fascinated with them since childhood and wanted to help reframe the increasingly fraught relationship between humans and the reptiles. If people don't understand them, you don't really have much hope of trying to convince people they are worth conserving, he told entertainment news site Den of Geek. So in the mid-90s, Britain turned up on the dusty plains of the Northern Territory, home to the biggest saltwater crocodile population on the planet. There, Graham Webb, a pioneer in the field, took the very, very enthusiastic young man under his wing at Crocodilus Park, a small zoo and research facility. Britain gravitated towards film and product projects, but also took part in research, including a 2005 study on the potent antibiotic powers of crocodile blood, which made global headlines. In 2006, he left to start a rival crocodile consultancy business alongside his wife, and later also took on an adjunct research role at Charles Darwin University. Over Britain's decades in Darwin's croc research fraternity, many peers who initially thought he was shy but nice enough came to view him as an antisocial odd man out. He was quite up himself, so he wasn't a particularly popular person, but he was reasonably good at his job, says Pomeroy, who organised research fieldwork for Crocodilus Park. Professor Webb had seen himself as a mentor of sorts, one who gave Britain his start in the industry and the opportunity to build filming expertise, but Britain burned all bridges when he quit. He was an egotist who passed much of the work of the team at Crocodilus Park as his own, Professor Webb alleges, and then poached their clients. There's scientists and then there's scientists, Professor Webb tells the BBC. He knew everyone and he had a lot of knowledge, but that's different. Librarians have a lot of knowledge too. No offence to the librarians there. Guys like Adam are just trying to get on the bloody news. Mr. Seidler, who with Britain co-founded the attack database called Crocbite in 2013, tells the BBC a similar story. Britain loved to take credit for the archive but had never contributed a single incident to it, Mr. Seidler says. He merely paid for the website domain. But in the broader community, Britain and his pet crocodile became stars. After leaving Crocodilus Park, he established himself as a go-to expert on croc behaviour and made his leafy estate in McMinn's Lagoon, at one point home to 8 crocodiles, a global filming destination. He had international standing unlike anyone else. One former friend and wildlife researcher, who asked not to be named, tells the BBC. When Sir David's Life in Cold Blood documentary series came knocking in 2006, Britain built a specialised enclosure for smog that allowed the programme to capture groundbreaking footage of crocodiles mating. It was a dream come true to work with his idol, Britain told the Daily Telegraph years later. Given how difficult it is to film many crocodile behaviours in the wild, the circus of TV crews circled through McMinn's Lagoon. If you've ever seen an underwater shot of a saltwater crocodile, there's a good chance it's smog, Britain told the NT News in 2018. Steve Blackshaw filmed scenes for his Deadly 60 documentary. Man vs. Wild's Bear Grylls paid a visit, and even more producers had Britain's numbers. His expertise was also sought after abroad. He helped measure the world's longest crocodile, captured in the Philippines in 2011, and in 2016 accompanied TV host Anderson Cooper on a dive with wild crocodiles in Botswana for an episode of CBS's 60 Minutes. He was a leader in the field, a nice guy. Australian actor and writer Andrew Chalky tells the BBC, and there's that, measuring that crocodile. It's a pity that crocodile didn't bite him and chew him up into tiny little bits. It says Mr. Chalky worked with Britain when filming croc horror film Black Water in 2008, as well as a 2019 sequel. He described spending many enjoyable hours on Britain's property. He kept company by his awesome Swiss Shepherds. By the time the zoologist was exploiting his own pets and manipulating other dog owners into giving him theirs, the court heard. Using online marketplace Gumtree Australia, he would find people who were often reluctantly giving their pets away to promise to provide a good home. If anyone reaches out for updates, he would tell them false narratives and send them old photos. Most of the time, the dogs were already dead, having experienced indescribable suffering inside a shipping container fitted out with recording equipment, which Britain called his torture room. Over the 18 months leading up to his arrest, he tortured at least 42 dogs, killing 39 of them. This is the thing that sort of haunted me since I've heard. You would have never picked him for that, Mr. Chalky says. The news similarly rocked the broader community. Hundreds of people around the world joined social media groups dedicated to following this case, and some turned up to his court hearings arguing he should be put to death, despite the penalty being outlawed in Australia since 1985. A small crowd even travelled to Darwin to see Britton being sentenced, crying inside the courtroom as his details of his crime, too graphic to publish, were read aloud. They wanted to be a voice for the pet owners swindled by Britain, most of whom are still too traumatised and guilt-ridden to speak out, as well as a visible symbol of the community's horror. I would look at that man and think, what an intelligent and kind man, and then to learn what he had done, I didn't sleep for 3 weeks, one of the attendees, Natalie Carey, says. With the benefit of hindsight, several people who knew Britain say they were fleeting moments when he appeared to lack empathy, but all say he was genuinely no indication he was violent or cruel. It wasn't like we saw him pulling the wings off grasshoppers just to watch them suffer. He wasn't one of those people, Professor Webb says. It's just sad when you realise that someone you know has been so messed up mentally and you weren't sharp enough to see it and do something about it. You do feel a sense of responsibility. Mr. Britton's lawyer argued he had suffered from a rare disorder causing intense atypical sexual interests since he was a child. But in his apology letter, Britton accepted full responsibility for the pain and trauma he had caused and promised to seek treatment. I will find a path towards redemption, he wrote. Best thing to do to him is feed him to an actual crocodile and televise it so we can all watch it. Watch him get eaten by a massive great crocodile, and I think then we'll call it even Stevens. Let me know down below what you think, and I'll catch you all in the next one.